Good morning, Skallywags. Spoo here with another mindless drivel, and please excuse the weird lighting. Working on getting some new studio lights, so there might be some funky shadows if my hands I tend to be a little animated sometimes. If you caught Monday and Wednesday's episode, then you already know what's happening today, and well, if you didn't catch Monday or Wednesday's episode, then, well, what's wrong with you? Don't bring shame on yourself, man. Just pause this, go back, watch them, and then come back. But just a quick little recap. Basically, we're talking about the fact that there is this new little trend in Hollywood where certain movies, big budget, blockbuster, giant, juggernaut movies, are having to be explained by the filmmakers after the fact. Basically, the number one rule of visual storytelling is to show, don't tell. But in the case of the movies we're talking about this week, that's not the case. Whether it be because the movies have simply become too big to hold their own story, or just that the studio execs that now make up, what filmmakers used to do, the movies simply left viewers with so many questions, so many plot holes, and just so many things that didn't make sense in general that they had to come out after the fact, take to their social media, and explain what actually happened in the movie that you just watched. And now you're up to speed. But really, you should go back and watch Monday and Wednesday just so you know what's going on, but anyway. Today, our journey brings us to Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, with the exception of a plot synopsis, basically, a leaked run-through of the film, if you will, I haven't really talked too much about Star Wars. So today, we're going to go through the movie and look at all of the questions, whether they've been answered by the filmmakers or not, and just simply put them out there to the world so that maybe you too, assuming you enjoyed the film, can now look back on it and say, yeah, what? Just like I've been doing since December when the movie came out. That light over here by Spawn does not want to stay on, and it's really starting to bug me. So yes, now that the movie is out on Blu-ray and DVD, and also since we just celebrated the 43rd anniversary of Star Wars, just this past week, let's dive into The Rise of Skywalker and get right to it because there are so many questions to ask. So hopefully this isn't going to take all day, but get comfy just in case. So yes, 43 years, 9 movies, if you don't count the extra Rogue One and Solo stuff, has all built up to this. The same bad guy from the other 2 trilogies. Yes, that's right. A Palpatine. For some reason. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. Get used to hearing "for some reason" because it will be said a lot. 43 years! Longer than I've even been alive! And that's a long time. The Rise of Skywalker, a movie completely mired in rumors, reshoots, horrible test screenings, like 4 different endings, behind-the-scenes drama, and even a George Lucas version, supposedly, that introduced, this completely unknown Skywalker from somewhere. Most likely this movie was completely doomed from the moment of its conception. Now, right off the bat, let's establish the fact that there is absolutely no way that they could have made everybody happy. No matter what, someone out there was going to be upset, even if this was the coolest movie ever made. Somebody would have been like, well, that was just a stupid remake episode. So instead of trying to make everyone happy, they decided to, make no one happy. And as mentioned, there were at least 4 different versions of this film floating around at one time or another. And that's not even counting Duel of the Fates, the Colin Trevorrow version that we could have gotten, which, if you have not read the script, it is out there online. In my opinion, it is a far superior movie. Includes a far better arc for all of our characters. And even though it also has its flaws, is a far better ending to the Skywalker saga as a whole. So now that we've seen what, toxic fandom can do online, can we go ahead and get the hashtag release the Trevorrow cut trending on Twitter? Can we get that? Can we do that? Side note, if you have not read the Trevorrow script and, well, you're just not, a fan of reading. I do intend on doing a full breakdown of everything that happened in that script, so subscribe to the channel if you want to see that. It should be coming up here pretty soon, so yeah, that's something to look forward to. But rumors, reshoots, multiple versions, behind the scenes drama, all of that aside, just like Avengers Endgame that we talked about on Wednesday, the Star Wars saga, more than probably any other franchise in existence, has simply grown too big to contain itself. Not too long ago, they were talking about doing some Old Republic type movies, like a trilogy set in the Old Republic. I was so excited for that, simply because of the fact that there is so much, both canon and legends, that is now squashed into this one little section of, time in this particular universe that we get to know, that it's boiling over. It can't contain all that lore anymore. No matter what they tried to do, it's become too top-heavy, and it would have just toppled over. So there's no way that they could have possibly made a movie that was satisfying to enough of the fans to truly bring a good closure to the Skywalker Saga, and I'm excited to see them do something else. You realize that since episode 1 to the end of episode 9, that only about 65 years have passed, and that's being generous. It's more maybe somewhere between 55 and 65 years. So less than a century within this one little time frame. The only way I believe that Star Wars can truly be successful going forward is if we see something that takes place outside of that, or at the very least disconnected entirely from the whole Skywalker story, the Jedi, all of that stuff. That's why The Mandalorian works so well. There's no Jedis running around in it. There's no familiar characters running around in it. There's about to be, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about episode 9. We're talking about plot holes. We're talking about unanswered questions. We're talking about things that are set up and never paid off. And we're talking about just general WTF moments in a movie, possibly more than any movie I've ever seen. And if there was ever a movie that should not have hit theaters before it was perfect, or at least as close to perfect as a movie can be, all loose ends tied up, all questions answered, it was Star Wars. Arguably the biggest and most popular movie franchise in cinema history. I know that they had a plan going in that they wanted to stick to a new sequel film every 2 years, even though both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy came out every 3 years. Even though they wanted to stick to that plan, once they realized how much trouble there was with this movie, they should have been like, you know what? Sorry guys, we're putting this off a few months or a year or whatever, because we want to give you the best closing chapter to the Skywalker Saga that we can possibly give you, and it's just not quite there yet. Or at one point in time, there was a rumor that the finale was going to be 2 movies. Maybe they should have done that, so that at least that way they could, answer some more questions and tie up some loose ends and take their time and not rush through everything. And, I don't know, maybe not worry too much about retconning everything from episode 8. Or maybe, just maybe, they should have, I don't know, planned out the movie ahead of time. But no, can't do that. Basically, J.J. Abrams got to do his story for episode 7. Then in comes Rian Johnson and says, I'm going to subvert everyone's expectations. There was no, planned thing for him to follow. He just did the story that he wanted to do. But unfortunately, what he wanted to do wasn't what J.J. had in mind when he made episode 7. So now he has to come back and get things back on track. And in some cases, even make a new track. Because, you screwed up big time back when you killed Snoke and did some other stuff back in episode 8 that nobody liked. And as far as the hatred for The Last Jedi goes, there was so much hatred for that film, so many things that fans didn't like, that Disney got scared. They fired Colin Trevorrow, brought back J.J. Abrams, because episode 7 was successful. People seemed to like that one. him and said, here, fix it. And perhaps he could have fixed things if the Disney executives had allowed him to do so. JJ said that basically the whole reason he agreed to come back was that this time they told him he had complete creative control. So he was pumped, he was excited, he was ready to go in and finish this thing off right. Unfortunately, then he got in there and found out that, well, that's not how movies are made anymore. People like Kathleen Kennedy have to come in and say, well, let's do this, and we want this to happen, and this needs to be in there, and change that, and no to this, up to the point that we end up with this muddled mess of fan service and forced diversity and retconning The Last Jedi. Why? Even if there was not a single person out there that enjoyed The Last Jedi, and believe it or not, there are some that like it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's not my favorite, but I didn't hate it. They should have simply accepted it and moved on. It happened. It's done. You can take the controversial things that happened in episode 8 and like turn them into something cool instead of just trying to pretend like that didn't happen 2 years ago. Just accept the fact that those things are now part of Star Wars history and move on and worry about the story you're trying to tell now. The Duel of the Fates script, it did just that. It took all the things from episode 8 and like just expanded upon them until they became something cool. And it worked. But no. Instead, we have to take precious film time that should have been used to tell a good story, but instead, we're going to use it to retcon everything from the last movie. So here we go. We're going to dive into this medium of storytelling that is meant to be visual and explain all the things that we did not get to see that we then have to ask and hope the filmmakers answer after the movie is over. Right off the bat, Palpatine is alive! A strange message has been put out across the galaxy on Fortnite for some reason.
The day of the Sith.
What? Why? How? You realize that only like maybe a third of the people that are watching your movie actually play We'll get there. Of course, how is the question that we all asked all the way back when the first trailer was released. So let's start with how. How is old Sheev Palpatine back from the dead? The last time we saw him, he was thrown down a giant reactor shaft, screaming all the way down. Remember that? All the way back on the second Death Star at the Battle of Endor 30, 40 years ago? Not only would that fall have killed him, or at the very least, the sudden abrupt stop at the end of the fall would have killed him.
Oh, come on.
But then moments later, the whole Death Star exploded. So unless he like fell down the shaft, somehow survived the fall, and then got on board a ship real quick, and then flew off to Exegol or wherever for the next 30 or 40 years, then that fall killed him. There's even all that like energy burst thing that like shoots back up the shaft after he falls down of it. I just said down of it, and I'm gonna keep it. When I was a kid, I always just assumed that that big blast of energy was like all of the force within Palpatine, his magic or whatever, just escaping out into the cosmos. Was that burst somehow him teleporting himself into the Force? Well, no, none of those things are correct, because according to J.J. Abrams, he's a clone. He's just a clone. Back in Legends, they actually did kind of the same thing, except, well, he was, much younger and more powerful, and whenever he died, his essence, or whatever you want to call it, his life force, just transferred into a new body. So if cloning is going to be your answer, then why not do that? Instead of having him be this, like, old, decaying, decrepit, looks worse than he did when his face was melted, hooked up to like a claw machine thing that carries him around, tubes sticking all out of him, pumping juices in to keep him alive. Why wouldn't you just put yourself into a younger version of yourself? That seems like it would make a little more sense. Maybe not be quite as inconvenient. And it seems like that's kind of an important story point, don't you think? The fact that he's a clone? So why didn't they tell us? Oh wait, they did.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Yup. There's your explanation. That's all you get. Thanks, movie. So the full explanation here is that, kind of like Legends, whenever he dies, he made a whole bunch of clones of himself, and then his essence just moves into a new body. Unfortunately, all of the bodies weren't quite strong enough to, contain all of that force power, because I guess that's a thing we're going with now. So the bodies just start to, deteriorate and fall apart because the power within it is just too dark and too evil. Which brings us to our next question. But before we move on with Palpatine, let's back up a couple of minutes. So the actual beginning of the movie is Kylo Ren. He's on this planet. It's like you got like a forest and there's fire, and Kylo Ren, he's killing all these guys in slow motion and stuff, and he's looking for a thing that kind of looks like a holocron, but it's not a holocron, it's a Wayfinder. And this Wayfinder is like a map that tells him how to get to Exegol, where this mysterious message from Palpatine came from. But the movie never establishes, where are we exactly, and who are these people that he's killing, and why are they attacking him, and are they protecting this thing, and if so, why? I mean, what's so important? We know it's a thing that's like a map type of thing, but who are these guys that are guarding it, and what importance? What? Tell us anything, please. Well, fun fact, the planet that we're on is Mustafar. The volcano planet where Anakin and Obi-Wan had their big climactic battle at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and then Anakin fell into the lava and became Darth Vader, and then later Vader would actually have a castle there on the same planet. Yeah, that Mustafar. Well, as far as we've ever seen before, the planet was just all volcanoes and stuff, so where'd all these trees come from? So here, the movie, literally, the very first scene of the movie is not only a question that needs answered, it's an entire scene that needs to be explained. Unless you've played the game Vader Immortal, then you would be left with this question as well. If you have played the game Vader Immortal, then you would know exactly how those trees got there and who these people were and why Mustafar looks so different. It's a very long, convoluted story, but basically, Mustafar used to be this very lush garden planet. The ruler of this planet was a Force-sensitive woman named Lady Corvax. One day, her husband is killed in battle, and she's absolutely devastated. And she becomes obsessed with how to resurrect him from the dead. So, hoping to discover the secrets to immortality, she finds this ancient Mustafar relic called the Bright Star, which sometimes I swear the things in Star Wars are named by a 6-year-old. The Bright Star, the Wayfinder. And basically she takes this Bright Star thing, she puts it into this engine, thinking and hoping that with the relic and with the Force that she can use it to bring her husband back from the dead. But instead, it literally killed the Force in the planet. So the garden died and became volcanoes. Somehow. Fortunately, over the last 30 or 40 years, since the last time we saw Mustafar back during Rogue One, the planet has now just conveniently began to heal itself. To be more specific, not only are we actually on Mustafar, but we are actually at the grounds of what was once Vader's castle. Vader actually had the Wayfinder stored away at his castle. And these dudes that he's fighting, they are a group called Alasmic of Winsett. They are apparently a group of Sith cultists who worshipped Darth Vader, and ever since Vader's death have taken it upon themselves to protect the grounds where he once lived, and where he once became Darth Vader, and all of his stuff that's just now left here for no one to claim. They're going to protect it and worship it and try to, get something from the Force that was left behind from him or something. In fact, they were actually the ones that also planted the iron trees in the area as a way to honor both Vader and Lady Corvax. So yeah, there's all this information and all this backstory, but visual storytelling. So Kylo gets the Wayfinder and he makes his way off to Exegol to find Palpatine. And as soon as he shows up, Palpatine starts talking to him in his head, saying that he is every voice he's ever heard in his head. And of course, he's hearing Palpatine's voice, he's hearing Snoke's voice, he's hearing Vader's voice. Important note to remember that one in a moment. And we even see this tank of Snoke's in it, Palpatine was growing Snokes in his spare time. Palpatine even says, "I made Snoke." But back when The Force Awakens came out, it was said that Snoke saw the rise and fall of the Empire, which implies that he's been around since like the prequel days. So how is that possible if he's just this thing that Palpatine grew like a chia pet? Of course, I do suppose that if Palpatine was Snoke, Snoke was like his puppet, so it was like Palpatine talking through. Then Palpatine saw the rise and fall of the Empire. So, but other people knew Snoke from those times. Even Leia said that he's been around. But I guess what I'm getting at is that Palpatine making Snoke doesn't make sense. But the biggest question that I have is if Palpatine is Snoke. Snoke is like an avatar for oh my god, it's confusing to even talk about it. If Snoke is Palpatine and he wants Rey so bad, why did he not do something when he actually had there in his grasp during The Last Jedi? The answer is, it doesn't matter, because that was a whole other movie that no one liked, and now we have to retcon it with this one. Basically, it's just one of the many jabs at The Last Jedi that this movie is going to take, so be prepared for that. And secondly, if Snoke was just a creation of Palpatine's and it wasn't a continuing thing after Snoke was killed, why did he need to make so many Snokes? Anyway, so he meets Palpatine. Palpatine's, monologuing like he loves to do, which I love Ian McDiarmid. I was so happy to see him back. He chews the scene and hams it up in classic fashion. So I'm so happy that he was in this, even if him being there didn't make any sense whatsoever. But I digress. So his body's crumbling because he's got so much power within him. His body can't contain the force within him, if you know what I mean. There's just so much power that it's literally just deteriorating the body. It's eating it from inside out. So that would be one answer as to why he's an old man and not, young, hot Palpatine. And the other answer would be so that Ian McDiarmid could be in the movie, and I'm glad that he was. So Palpatine reveals to Kylo Ren his big plan for the Final Order, and he's got all these Star Destroyers and stuff. So why did it take 30 some odd years for him to launch his plan in the first place? And oh dear God, I just realized we're like however many minutes into this video and we're still on the first scene. Well, according to J.J. Abrams, the reason why it took 30 years is, on the one hand, he had to actually build the fleet. We'll come back to that. But also because he was trying to find the right body force combo. Trying to get the right body that wouldn't just, eat away at itself because of the raw force inside of it. Thus allowing him to regain power again, and thus why he now wants Rey to be brought to him in the movie. But unfortunately, even that right there's a couple of things that don't make a little bit of sense. So to skip ahead in the movie to answer a couple of questions that have to be answered now because we're on topic, Rey is of course Palpatine's granddaughter. Much like you, whenever I first heard this grand realization, my brain immediately went to, but wait, for him to have a grandchild, that means that he has a child, which means that, oh God. Just the thought of Mr. Melty Face putting on some slow jazz and light some candles, maybe used force lightning to light the candles, that'd be cool. And just getting intimate with the... Palpatine did not, in fact, get freaky in the Force. You see, the filmmakers also explained that Palpatine's child was Rey's father, and that it wasn't an actual child, it was one of the many clones that he had made to transfer his essence into, but that clone developed its own personality, fell in love, and had a child named Rey, and then ran off to be with his wife or whatever and his daughter until they were tracked down and killed. But hold on, I thought that the whole purpose of the clones was to transfer your essence and your life force and force powers and stuff over into the new body. So do they all just have their own personalities until the time you decide that it's time to do that? And how old do they have to be before you do that? Do you just let them grow into adulthood and develop their own personality and decide who they're gonna be, and then one day you're like, okay, well, time for me to become you? Which would imply that for like 30 some odd years or so, that Palpatine just had this like totally really nice chill guy just hanging out with him and all those robe dudes on Exegol, just wishing that someday he could get away and go to some place where it's not dark and raining all the time and maybe find a woman and settle down. So many questions about that. Too many questions about that. And apparently he didn't even like start hunting this guy until he learned of Rey's existence. Which, how did he learn of Rey's existence? Well, you could say that he felt her in the Force, but if he felt her, then why could he not feel where she was on Jakku for like 14 years? But the main thing I really want to know is like, how do you even get a good clone? Do you just make a new clone and then just kick back for a few years hoping that he grows up to be just as evil as you? I mean, that brings whole new meaning to that whole disappointing your parents thing. Did he escape? Was he allowed to leave? I mean, what? So many I want a movie just to explain this. How? I just want to know, how did all of this play out? How did any of that come into play? And the answer is because Rian Johnson killed off Snoke even though they didn't want him to do that, so they had to come up with a new bad guy. So they thought, hey, let's bring Palpatine back and we can make Rey his grandchild somehow. But we'll just have to explain how that's possible. For some reason. So Grandpapa Palp, he reveals the big final order plan to Kylo Ren. And he says this fleet of Star Destroyers all equipped with Death Star cannons can be yours if the price is right. All you have to do is bring me the girl. And of course, this is when all these Star Destroyers like burst up through the ground, which, okay, hey, great, makes for nice, little cinematic moment, but could you not like build a door or something? Where underground were you making these? I mean, just thousands of these ships, so you had to have like miles of caves, like several miles high even, room to build thousands of ships, and then you like completely destroy the ground above you to raise them up. And the question that everybody loves to ask is, where did these ships come from? Who built them? Did he just conjure them with the Force? He's like moving parts together with the Force, and that's why it took 30 years. Where'd all the people that work on the ships come from? But actually, this one is answered in the movie, believe it or not. There is a completely throwaway line from Poe Dameron's speech where basically he says this:
His followers have been building something for years.
And we've got 16 hours until they start attacking planets. 16 hours. So you mean that even though we go to like multiple planets in this movie and we see both day, then night, then day again, that this whole movie took place over the course of 16 hours? Sure it did. Go lay down. So yes, to Kylo Ren, he says, all of this can be yours if you bring me the girl or you kill the girl or whatever it is he says. Okay, so at this point we are 6 minutes and 38 seconds into the movie. And the movie is 2 hours and 22 minutes long. Whew. Oh boy. Moving on. No real questions from the next part of the movie, but we do learn a couple of things that don't make any sense. We learn that there is a spy within the First Order because there were only about 15 people alive in the Resistance at the end of The Last Jedi, and we need to fix that somehow. Give the Resistance a little bit of an upper hand to, make a comeback. We learn that light speed skipping is a thing for some reason, even though that makes 0 sense. You remember back in A New Hope when they're getting ready to jump to hyperspace to get to Alderaan? It took Han Solo a few minutes to like punch in coordinates and stuff. He said that if you jump the light speed too fast that you can fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova. Those don't sound like good things. I can even live with the fact that every subsequent jump to light speed consisted of just pulling a lever down because, well, let's face it, it would really slow things down if they had to punch all those buttons and turn those knobs and stuff every single time. But you're literally just pointing in a direction, going to light speed, hoping you don't hit anything, coming out of it, turning slightly, and then doing it again. So even ignoring the fact that that makes no sense, how would TIE fighters even possibly follow you? For them to be able to follow you, they would have to be pulling their lever down at the exact same moment that you are. But that's impossible because it's literally light speed. So you go to light speed, they then have to react to that, pull their lever down, also go to light speed, hope that they come out of light speed at the same place and time that you do, multiple times. By the time that they got to anywhere, the Falcon would have already been 2 jumps ahead to the next place. And why does doing this make the Millennium Falcon catch on fire? Anyway, so Rey can fly now. Good thing that there's never been a time in the history of Star Wars where that might have come in handy. So how does Rey have Luke's lightsaber again? I mean, she rebuilt it because it's always good to alter your merchandising just a little bit so people have to buy the new one. But when we last saw it, it got, blown in half. And I'm not even talking about the fact that it got broke. I mean, you can fix it, and it's obvious she did some modifications on it, but like, how did she actually get it? I mean, Kylo was pretty dead set on getting it too, and they were already fighting, and so she turns down his proposal to join him. So then she's like, nope, I'm gonna go ahead and go, but hang up real quick, let me pick this up real quick. Why does Poe get mad at Rey for not coming on the mission that they just got back from? He's like, you would have been very useful on that mission, but how would she have been so useful? I mean, sure, Rey's a good pilot and all, but you are actually known as being the best pilot in all of the Resistance. You've got Chewie there, so you don't need a co-pilot. So what's she gonna do? Just like hang out and keep you company? Did he think that maybe she would have been useful in getting away from the TIE fighter somehow? Like she can just use the Force to like reach out and... Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Did he forget the fact that her using the Force is like the only reason that any of the Resistance people are still alive? So maybe her training is just a little important, Speaking of Rey's training, while she's out there, she tries to, speak of the ghosts of Jedi's past. But since they don't communicate back with her, and because she gets so mad and like smashes the probe droid thing with the staff instead of with the lightsaber, she gives Leia Luke's lightsaber and says that she's going to earn it someday. Someday. Not today, but someday. Poe gives a big speech about Grandpa Palp returning somehow. Like he literally says he returned somehow.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
And we get that ever so popular line from Mary Brandybuck.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Cloning are secrets that only the Sith knew? Did everybody forget that just 50 years ago or so, that there was something called the Clone Wars? I mean, sure, it was a long time ago, but it's kind of a big deal. I mean, that would be like if you and I never heard of World War II. It would literally be like if I called the Holocaust secrets only the Nazis knew. So Poe says that Palpatine is hiding on a planet called Exegol, and R2-D2 chimes in and says that Exegol isn't on any star map, but that legend says that it is the Sith homeworld. How does R2-D2 know Sith legends? Why would any droid know Sith legends? I mean, to be fair, if there was any droid in the entire universe that knew Sith legends, it should be R2-D2, because he's kind of like supposed to be one of the most important characters of this entire saga, but I really feel like they let him do some beeps and boops to say that Exegol isn't on any star map and that it's a Sith homeworld, just so he could actually, have something to do in this movie, because otherwise he does not. Fortunately, Rey had literally just read about Exegol in the previous scene, and also knew that you have to find a Wayfinder. That's the only way you can even get there. And it turns out that Luke had been looking for a Wayfinder to get to Exegol. It was like one of the last things he was doing before he went off into seclusion. And he had made it as far as a planet called Pisana, and then that's where he ran into a Jedi bounty hunter Sith guy called Ochi. So Rey says that she needs to finish what Luke started, and she's got to go to Pisana and find the Wayfinder and go to Exegol and destroy Palpatine. For some reason, Leia tells her no. Rey says she's gonna do it anyway because that's what you would do, Leia. And as a result, Leia decides, well, here's Luke's lightsaber back. So if you ever find yourself in Jedi training and you have to hand your lightsaber over to your master because you've yet to earn it, all you have to do to earn it is say, I'm gonna do it anyway, when they tell you no. And it's best if you do this, maybe 3-4 minutes after you've handed them the lightsaber and told them you didn't earn it in the first place. You'll earn it back right then and there. Problem solved. So Rey starts to take off. She says that she wants to go alone because because I don't know why. But then Poe and Finn and Chewie and BB-8, they're all going to come with her, and C-3PO, they're all coming along with her anyway, whether she likes it or not. And they do that so that the movie can happen. On the way out, Finn actually stops and asks Rose if she wants to come along too, but, well, fans hated her in the last movie, so they decided she needs to stay behind and study the specs on Star Destroyers. And to Rose Tico, I genuinely apologize for the human race. Then we cut to a scene where we see Kylo Ren surrounded by the Knights of Ren, and he's having his mask rebuilt by a chimpanzee. Which, okay, fine. But one question, how'd you get the pieces of your mask back? It's kind of right up there with the lightsaber thing. It was on Snoke's ship, and Snoke's ship got blowed up. Are you seriously telling me that somewhere between killing Snoke and fighting all the guards, having your moment with Rey, then the ship gets blown in half, and you now have to, like, haul it to get to a ship to get off of that ship, that somewhere between trying to escape this ship that's dying in space because it's been blown in half, that you took the time to go back to an elevator to pick up the broken pieces of your mask? Of course he did, because if he didn't, we wouldn't be able to have the action figure with all the cool red lines in his helmet. So we get to Pisana, where the Burning Man Festival is happening, and right away we establish a thing that is like more annoying than anything else in this whole movie, where like some random character comes up to Rey. It's a character we've never seen before ever. In this case, it's like a young alien child thing. Gives Rey a necklace and asks her name. She of course says Rey, and then they ask, what's your last name? As if that is a thing that has ever happened ever. How many times have you introduced yourself to someone and said, hi, I'm Carl Johnson? That's shaking hands. I just realized that probably did. You have a dirty mind. But in this movie, it happens twice, where they insist on knowing her last name for some reason. Never before has anyone been like, Luke what? Or Leia who? Or Han.
What? Who are your people?
Oh, right. Forgot about that one. Never before in any movie of any importance has that ever... Basically, she received the necklace so that Kylo Ren could then have one of his little Force Skype calls with Rey, and he can snatch it off of her neck, have his people, you know, test it and whatever, and say, oh, it's from Pisana. And by the way, yes, we are going to lean into that whole passing things through the Force real hard. Basically, in this movie, the Force has been rebranded from this thing that, like, you know, binds us all together and, you know, kind of helps you, like, lift stuff sometimes and maybe shoot lightning from your thing, to basically whatever the Force does, whatever we need it to do in this scene. I'm going to throw this light in a moment. It's already gone off. It fell a minute ago. So Kylo Ren figures out where they are and he sends troops to their location. Actually, there were already some troops at their location, which brings me to a question that's not only about this movie, but just the sequel trilogy in general. That being, how much power does the First Order actually have? There's a New Republic. I mean, I know that Starkiller Base blew up the New Republic homeworld or whatever, like the new Coruscant of this timeline, but they're not the Empire. They started as remnants of the Empire and then, like, have been growing, but it has never been established that they are the dominant leading government of this galaxy. So, like, how do they have troops occupying planets, and how can they just gonna show up and do whatever they want whenever they want? Basically, they are the rebels in this timeline, or they should be anyway. Anyway, we get a little bit of a pod racing slash Jabba's skiff throwback thing, complete with flying stormtroopers.
They fly now!
And the group finds Ochi's ship just conveniently in time to get shot down and fall into quicksand. If only there was some way that someone had some kind of, like, I don't know, an ability to, like, pull people out of quicksand. If only we had such a power. And then Finn starts screaming, Rey! Rey! Because, well, he does that. I mean, I would love to look up how many times is the word Rey screamed by Finn just in this movie, let alone all three. I never told you! That's it. Never says what he never told her. I mean, it comes up like 2 or 3 times throughout the movie, mostly Poe asking him, so what was it you were going to tell her? I think Rey asks him once, what was you going to tell me? And he just keeps saying, never mind, I'll tell you later. Don't worry about it, it's all good. But then he never says it! He never says what it was! Ever! We never find out! Fortunately, J.J. Abrams has answered that question for us. No, it was not a love connection or anything like that. He wasn't going to tell her, you know, Rey, I never told you I have feelings for you. He was going to tell her that he is force sensitive. Because why not? There are a few times in the movie where they do kind of nod toward that possibility. One way in particular, much later in the film, that's really, really dumb. But what is so terrible about this is not only did they just leave a question unanswered, but they intentionally put it in there and didn't answer it. In fact, they took steps to not answer it. There's a scene very late on in the movie where Finn was going to use the Force to actually open like a hatch on one of the Star Destroyers that when they're doing the big attack at the end, but instead they changed it to BB-8 opening the hatch. So they literally intentionally took out Finn using the Force just to not answer this question. Why? Oh, by the way, I totally forgot that Lando showed up for just a moment. Basically, right before the big chase scene with the flying stormtroopers and stuff. They fly now! They run into Lando, who just happens to be on Pisana for some reason. Mosquito. And he says that he actually was with Luke looking for Ochi and his ship and whatever, trying to find the Wayfinder to get to Exegol. Says they found Ochi's ship out in the desert, the one we conveniently saw just a moment ago right before the quicksand, but that once they found it, the trio went cold. So speaking of quicksand, they all sink in and they die, the end. So thanks for joining me, guys. If only that were the case. No, they sink into quicksand and immediately fall into a cave. Now, I know that the laws of physics in Star Wars don't exactly go hand in hand, but if your ceiling is quicksand, how do you have a ceiling at all? But anyway, they fall through this, somehow existing ceiling thing into this cave. And hey, wouldn't you know it, we found Ochi right away! Or what's left of him, because we need things to be as convenient as possible in this movie, because we've only got 16 hours, we've only got 2 hours and 22 minutes to wrap up every loose end and keep this thing moving while retconning the previous movies in the meantime. And did Luke and Lando just, not search the area at all? Did they just find his ship and be like, well, he's nowhere to be seen? I mean, there's some quicksand over there, but, well, he's not here, let's go. He was right there. Anyway, they find Ochi's corpse, skeleton, whatever you want to call it, and he happens to have a matter of convenience. He happens to have this dagger on him, and this dagger's got some fun little writing on it. And 3PO reads it, and he says, oh, it's to the location of the Wayfinder. And they're like, awesome, where is it? And he's like, I can't tell you. And they're like, well, why not? And he says, because it's written in an ancient Sith text, and he's not allowed to read Sith text for some reason. Okay, so sure, you get a whole other planet and a whole other segment of movie based around the fact that 3PO can't say Sith language or can't translate Sith language out loud. So could he not just either A, point them in the direction to go, B, write it down, or I don't know, how about you just have him be able to say it out loud, and then you can skip that whole planet out of the movie, and I don't know, maybe speed some things along and answer a few more questions and stop wasting our time to where I now have to make a 2-hour-long video talking about the Rise of Skywalker's unanswered questions. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, where did this whole thing about not being able to vocally translate a Sith language, where did that come from? It's been established that C-3PO was built by Anakin Skywalker, a protocol droid to help his mom around the house. So how does the ability to translate or not translate Sith language, is there ever going to be a scenario where that will be helpful or not helpful to his mom around the house? What's the point of putting that programming in there? Okay, so 3PO's had his mind wiped at least a couple of times between then and now. Maybe somewhere along the line that rule was put in there, but why? He was a droid that was in a rebellion that was known to be battling against a Sith. So did they just not think that at some point in time, the ability to, translate Sith language might come in handy? Possibly. But no, rules are rules. Fortunately, Poe knows of a person who can, wipe his mind and reboot him or whatever to let him translate it. But in doing so, he's going to lose all of his memories. And everybody is just immediately like, yeah, let's do that.
It's a terribly dangerous and sinful act performed on unwitting droids by dregs and criminals.
Let's do that.
Because everybody hates 3PO. Remember that. Then a giant snake shows up with a cut on it so that Rey can show us that force healing is now a thing, even though The Mandalorian showed us literally the night before it came out, because it's going to be like the most stupid, important thing in this whole freaking movie, and I hate it, because there are so many other times where force healing would have been so useful, and now everybody seems to know how to do it, but no one's ever been able to do it before, and so this snake can be healed and then break through a wall so that they can now get out. So they go back to Ochi's ship, they find a little droid there, they start him up. Did Luke and Lando just not see the broken droid? Did they not ever bother to turn him on? Maybe he's got some information in him. Spoilers, Luke. He does. But no, I guess they just decided that this droid is completely invaluable to us and completely pointless for us to even check out, so let's just leave him here. And it's about this time that Rey recognizes that this ship is the ship that dropped her off on Jakku. But her parents hid her. So why is Ochi's ship her parents' ship? Or was it her parents' ship and Ochi was some ship? And aren't ships mass-produced, so couldn't it just be one like the one that dropped her off on Jakku? Or this is something that's never going to be answered in the movie. Nor has it been answered by anybody since then. So, was it Ochi's? Was it her parents? Or was it just one that looked like it? Were they the same ship? I don't know. Kylo Ren finally shows up, and he's getting his little TIE silencer, and he's flying down through the desert so we can have that awesome shot from the trailer where Rey's facing down a TIE fighter. That's all cool and all, but thing is, see, his goal was to catch her and take her to Palpatine, he says, to kill Palpatine. So if he's going to catch her to take her to Palpatine, why is he trying to mow her down in a TIE fighter? Maybe the plan was to kill her, then take her there to kill Palpatine. I don't know. Oh, right, it's so we can have a cool shot for the trailer when Rey flips over the TIE fighter and cuts the wing off. Speaking of cutting the wing off, so she cuts the wing off and the TIE fighter goes rolling, literally rolling down into a giant fireball. Do I even want to know how Kylo survived that without a scratch? No? Okay. Oh, and by the way, the Knights of Ren are also here. I say and by the way because they really don't do anything. They're just there. So glad we got to wait, 6 years for those guys to show up. But they do capture Chewie, so I guess there's something for them to do. Which brings me to my next question. So the Knights of Ren capture Chewie and they load him on a transport ship. And Finn is standing right there. They are right here. He's on a rock and they are right there, me to the camera. That's how far away. Not quite, but you get my point. He then runs a few steps and yells to Rey, "Rey, they got Chewie. They got Chewie." The ship starts to take off. To jump ahead a little bit, this is not the ship that Chewie is on. Finn was right there. So where did this other ship come from? Or at the very least, how did Finn not see another ship? Come on. This movie is giving me a headache. Anyway, thinking Chewie is on board, Rey uses the Force. She grabs the ship. Kylo Ren's like, nope. So he grabs the ship and he's trying to pull it the other way. And so they're struggling and they're going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, Rey accidentally fires lightning from her hands and blows up the ship. Which we already know Chewie's not on board because there are no stakes in this movie. That'll come up again. But just because she's a Palpatine, is that how you're going to tease that by having her shoot lightning? Palpatine's not the only person who did the lightning thing. Do we not remember Count Dooku? He did the lightning thing a few times too. So the fact that she accidentally shoots lightning is just weird. It doesn't tell us anything. It's just weird. Anyway, she runs, she gets on the ship, they fly away, they escape. Rey says that she had a vision of her sitting on a dark throne with Kylo Ren. We never get to see that. Seems like that would have been kind of cool. Actually, that sounds like something that was stolen from the Trevorrow script, which again, we'll do a breakdown. That's the word I'm looking for. Breakdown of that one next week or the week after, so stay tuned. Okay, so now we're about 43 minutes into the movie, so we're doing a little bit better than we were before. Poe says they've got about 8 hours left, so we're literally halfway through, and we've only gone to 1 planet so far. Okay, sure. So they head to Kijimi to wipe C-3PO's mind. There we run into Zori Bliss. She says that Poe used to be a spice runner, and I have 2 questions about this. Number 1, all of the new books, comics, anything that comes out post the Disney purchase is now the new canon. Everything is all connected, and it's all meant to be real. So this whole thing about Zori Bliss saying that he was a spice runner, why does it completely contradict Poe's backstory from the comics and books and stuff? And 2, Finn has like a serious problem with the fact that he used to run spice. Why? I mean, I know that running spice is basically the equivalent to being like a drug dealer in the Star Wars universe, but dude, you used to be a stormtrooper. So we get to the best character in this whole movie. I would seriously throw some good money down to see a Babu Frick movie, I'm just saying.
Hello, I Babu Freak.
And C-3PO takes one last look at the people that hate him.
Let's do that.
C-3PO is set back to 0, which is funny for a few moments, but then R2 just, puts his memory back into him, because again, there are no stakes in this movie. In a good story, even though it would have been immensely painful to the fans, both Chewie and C-3PO's losses would have been completely real. It would have shown us that all bets are off, and this is, gonna go dark, and it's not gonna go the way that you think that it is. Just having these constant fake outs where, oh, he's dead. Oh, no, he's not. It loses every bit of emotion that we've actually put into the movie. Kind of ruining it here for us, JJ. Or should I say Kathleen? Zori Bliss says that she plans on going to the colonies. The colonies. That thing we've never heard of before and never gets explained. And that she's going to get there using a captain's medallion. Another thing we've never heard of before. Now, what is a First Order captain's medallion? What does it do? What is it used for? I mean, whatever it is, Poe's never seen one before. Zori says that it's free passage through any blockade, free landing privileges, any vessel, and she's going to use it to get out of the war-torn system that she's stuck on and has been for years. Even though we've never heard of the colonies before, don't know what they are or anything about them, Poe says that all of the hyperlanes leading to the colonies have been blocked by the First Order. So why are those hyperlanes blocked and not any other hyperlanes? It's not like the Resistance is just going to be hiding out at a place called the colonies. And for that matter, how do you block a hyperlane? This is all new information. None of that really matters at all because the First Order shows up and Zori just immediately gives it to Poe to let him escape. So there's that. Thanks for bringing that up into the story, I guess. So they escape and they use it to fly to board the Star Destroyer, Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer, because we feel that Chewie's on there. We gotta save Chewie. We gotta get the dagger back. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, they're down on Kijimi. They're looking for Rey. Rey does yet another force power we've never actually seen on this magnitude before. Rey uses the Force to mind control 2 people at once. But let's remember, she is not a Mary Sue. And everybody splits up, so Poe and Finn, they go off to save Chewie, and Rey goes off to get the dagger from Kylo's bedroom, or whatever it's supposed to be, his office or something. Quarters. Rey and Kylo have another Skype call, and Kylo Ren decides to tell her this movie's version of who her parents are. He says that he did not lie to her before, that her parents were no one, but they were no one by choice. Only problem with that is, that's not how it happened. He didn't tell her that her parents were no one. She said it.
You know the truth. Say it.
They were nobody.
Then Kylo Ren says they were filthy junk traders that sold you off for drinking money. So, 1, he didn't tell her they were nobody, and 2, yes, you did lie to her. Either that or JJ just didn't bother watching The Last Jedi. He just heard that that's what had gone down between Kylo and Rey and just ran with it. And then this is where we find out about Rey being a Palpatine and that, her parents were killed by Ochi after they wouldn't give her up. So, they were just gonna let them live if she had been like, yeah, here's the kid, here you go, have fun. We're gonna go the honeymoon or something now. And for whatever reason, Rey tells him that she doesn't want to know what happened to them. Isn't that literally the one thing that she's been trying to figure out for the last 3 movies? Meanwhile, Kylo Ren's trying to figure out where Rey is, as if this whole time she hasn't been holding a dagger that was specifically in his quarters. He doesn't figure out where she is until they accidentally knock over the little podium thing that holds Darth Vader's helmet. Speaking of the helmet, there is a scene earlier in the movie where Kylo goes back and he's trying to like talk to Vader again, and while we don't hear anything, maybe he doesn't hear anything either, I don't know, but regardless, earlier in the movie, the very first scene of this movie to be in fact, Palpatine told him that he was every voice that he's ever heard inside of his head, and one of those voices was Vader. So why, after knowing that it was just Palpatine screwing with him, why would he go back and try to talk to the helmet again? But I digress. So they knock Vader's helmet over, he figures out where she's at, they're still fighting and all of this fun stuff, and then she says that, what happened to my parents? 2 seconds ago you didn't want to know, and now you do want to know. I need some Advil, hold on. Kylo says that Palpatine wanted her dead because he was afraid of how powerful she was going to become. And yet, isn't that the entire reason that Palpatine wants her brought to him? Because of how powerful she is? I mean, he wants to possess her, so powerful is a good thing, because then it's mixing her power and his power, making like uber power. But no, I must kill her because she's exactly what I need her to be. Do you see how this movie is rather aggravating when you stop and think about some things for a little bit? Then Kylo tells her that something that, well, has become a point of a lot of debate, that he and Rey are a dyad.
We're a dyad. 2 that are 1.
2 that are 1. He never explains that. Nobody ever explains that. So what is that supposed to mean? In case you don't know, a dyad is a social circle specifically consisting of 2 people. So like a parent and a child, or a husband and a wife, or siblings. So in this case, because of their connection, they are a dyad in the Force. My question about this, however, is that it is established that Snoke created the connection between Rey and Kylo Ren. And since Snoke is Palpatine, then essentially Palpatine created the connection between Kylo Ren and Rey. So how does he not know that they are a dyad? Except for the fact that Kylo explains it that he is the son of a Skywalker and Rey is the daughter of a Palpatine, and that this is why they are a dyad in the Force. But why would that be the case? With the exception of the fact that Anakin and Palpatine were connected simply because they worked together, basically, and Anakin killed Palpatine. There is no connection between these 2 families. Unless somehow Shmi Skywalker was involved with a Palpatine somehow. There is no connection other than a Force bond that has been created by Palpatine himself. So please, if you would, explain that one. Once again, Kylo asks Rey to join him so that they can go and kill Palpatine together. Rey says no. For some reason? Why would she say no to this? Isn't her entire motivation in this movie to find Palpatine and kill him? They are literally spending all this time to find a Wayfinder, which will give them direction to get to Exegol so that she can kill Palpatine. Kylo Ren, meanwhile, is saying, screw the Wayfinder, just come with me, I'll take you to Exegol and we can kill him together. Wouldn't that save time? But no, the movie's gotta happen, I guess, so they escape again. And they move on to Endor, because that's where the Wayfinder is located. And this is where Rey says that she wants to kill Palpatine for killing her parents. She wants revenge. They liked their fan service so much, why didn't they call this one Revenge of the Jedi? And she could have just gone with Kylo and killed him already. They could be done with it by now. But no, she blew it. For reasons. They get to Endor, they crash the Millennium Falcon, and then they run into like this group of people on these horse warthog hybrid things, and come to find out all these people are all former stormtroopers just like Finn. And they said that they were all out on their very first mission and they were instructed to like kill a group of people, but by instinct, as if by some unseen force, they all laid their weapons down, just like Finn. They all had the same notion at the same time, like a feeling. So the question here is, are all stormtroopers basically like Force users that just don't know that they're Force users? I mean, it has been established that the First Order is like abducting children like at a very young age and then putting them into training to become stormtroopers. So are they just hunting down Force sensitive children and abducting them and training them before they can learn to use the Force? Because honestly, if that's the case, that is awesome and they should have explored that. But no, of course, that would have made the movie interesting, so can't do that. Then the dumbest thing happens in this whole movie, and given some of the points that I've already brought up, that's saying a lot. Rey holds up the dagger, and it fits the wreckage of the Death Star like the map from the Goonies. And then this little arm pulls out of the hilt that points to where the Wayfinder is. It's like a "You Are Here" map. So, okay, let's break this one down. This is definitely the most headache-inducing question that I have about this whole movie. This dagger is supposed to be some kind of ancient Sith artifact. So, did some ancient Sith have, like, a premonition of the exact shape of the Death Star wreckage sitting in the middle of an ocean, and then, like, design a dagger based off of that premonition? Did Ochi, like, go to Endor and sit on the banks of this big ocean and sit there and make the dagger himself? Sitting there for, like, weeks on end, like, shaping this thing, hold it up, nope, not quite right, shape it a little bit more like One-Eye Willie style? Or is it just some kind of like sheer coincidence through the Force? On top of that, it's sitting in an ocean that even like Wikipedia, the like end-all tell-all of Star Wars, says is a saltwater ocean. Even like the visual dictionary for the Rise of Skywalker says that the Death Star wreckage is sitting in this saltwater ocean being pounded away at by waves for the last 30 some odd years, and in the dictionary it says that it is eroding. So not only is this thing coincidentally shaped like the wreckage, but it's shaped like the wreckage right now. At this very moment right now. Come back in 2 weeks and it could be completely different. But right now, it matches up. Anyway, Jana, the main stormtrooper, former stormtrooper girl, she says that they've got some boats and she'll take them out there in the morning. But of course, we don't have morning. We've got like maybe 6 or 7 hours at this point. And Rey sneaks off and like steals a boat and she goes out there by herself. But Jana says that she knew that they were coming because somebody named Babu Frick had like radioed out that they were coming. She also tells them that they can fix the Falcon because they had to crash the Falcon to land on Endor. Now, it's already been established a while ago that there was 8 hours left. And are you seriously telling me that you can fix a ship that literally just crash landed on a planet with no landing gear, no nothing, a ship that was already junk to begin with, then it went through all of the events of the original trilogy, then it like sat for 30 some odd years, then it's gone through everything that it's gone through in the last couple of movies, and they're able to fix it in like an hour? Sure. Why not? So Rey gets on board the Death Star, she climbs through all the wreckage, sees some cool stuff that would have been fun to explore for a little bit, but we don't have time for that, and she makes her way to the Emperor's throne room. Apparently, during Return of the Jedi, that entire time that we were watching Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader fight, there was a door that was like right there next to the Emperor's throne, like 3, 4, 5, 10 feet away, that contained a Wayfinder that tells you how to get to Exegol, but we never saw that door. There was no wall there, no door there, but there is now. So she gets the Wayfinder, and then she like turns around, and there stands this vision of evil Rey with the most impractical, stupid-looking lightsaber ever in Star Wars history. This lasts for like 2 seconds. She growls at her, and then she's gone. So I mean, was this like in her head? Was this happening? Was this like, what was this? Was this like the cave on Dagobah or on Ahch-To? What is this evil Rey thing? Explain, please. Then Kylo shows up, and like right away, he just crushes the Wayfinder, officially rendering like the last hour of this movie completely pointless. And once again, he asks Rey, just come with me. We'll go to the Emperor right now. We'll kill him together. And she says no. Officially proving Rey is not a Mary Sue. She's just stupid. That is now multiple times in this movie where Kylo Ren has been like, like, screw this thing that's taking you hours to complete, where you're going and finding this Wayfinder thing and going to multiple planets to achieve this just so you can get to Exegol and kill the Emperor? Come with me. We'll do it together right now. And she turns down the offer. What's wrong with you? And this time, instead of just saying no, she attacks him. Because why not? Side note here, Rey has Palpatine's blood coursing through her veins. She's already said that she wants revenge for her parents' death. We've already seen her earlier in the movie get frustrated with the little training droid thing and smash it with her stick instead of with her lightsaber. She lashes out more than any Jedi we've ever seen, ever, and that's including Anakin. And even when she's not lashing out, she is like filled to the brim with all different kinds of emotions. She cries like every other scene, and yet we are still supposed to believe that she's this ultimate good guy who's never going to turn to the dark side because she's the good guy and she's gonna be the one to destroy the Sith for good. Yeah, I don't buy it. Like, we thought Anakin was bad because he missed his mommy, so he kills a bunch of sand people for, like, raping his mom, I guess. I don't know. Did they rape her? But even he didn't, like, break down crying and, like, lash out as often as Rey does. And we saw what happened with him. So I'm just saying, like, okay, so she wipes out the Sith and, like, okay, oh, the Force is in balance, finally. Except until she goes bad, which, given the way she acts throughout this whole movie, is like 3-4 scenes away. For whatever reason, about this time, ignoring all the fights that Kylo Ren and Rey have had in the past, this one, Leia senses. Now, I haven't really talked about Leia, but all of her scenes in this movie felt so awkward. Like, I totally understand Carrie Fisher died and they had to use unused footage of her from the previous 2 movies and have a stand-in, basically, you know, do the body work and all that good stuff. But every line of dialogue felt out of place and just, it felt very awkward anytime she was interacting with anyone on screen. Then we come to this part of the movie, and I said back before the movie came out that if they killed off Leia in this movie, that would be so disrespectful. Not only do they kill her off, but they do it in the weirdest way humanly possible. And I have a theory on what exactly happens in this scene, but we'll get to that in a moment. So they're fighting, and for whatever reason, she senses this fight and decides, you know, this is the moment that I've been waiting for since my last night of training, and that'll come up later. So she decides that now is the time that I need to step in and actually do something. So here's how I believe that this actually played out. Bear with me. First off, what is the purpose of this fight to begin with? If Rey somehow wins this fight, she still doesn't know how to get to Exegol. So she's just completely screwed and has now thus screwed over the entire galaxy because Palpatine will just attack and blow everybody up anyway. And if Kylo Ren wins the fight, then he's just going to take Rey to the place that she wants to go to anyway. So why are they even fighting? Anyway. Okay, here's the Leia stuff. Here we go. This is what I actually think is happening here step by step. It's the only way that I can make it make sense in my brain. To be fair, the movie does not explain any of this stuff, does not even suggest any of this stuff. This is just how my brain has put it together, and it makes the most amount of sense. So Leia takes Han's medal from the Battle of Yavin from back in A New Hope, and she takes it and she goes lays down. Why would she have that medal just laying around in the first place? I don't know. Maybe she found it in a drawer on the Falcon or something. We'll go with that. Now, at first, I thought maybe she grabbed the medal as like a way to focus on Han. Something that like kind of connected her and Han, something that we the audience would also recognize, and that she used the medal to actually project Han Solo to appear before Kylo Ren. So when we see them talking, it's not a memory like Kylo Ren says, it's a force projection, kind of like what Luke did at the end of The Last Jedi, except it's Leia projecting Han, because unfortunately we didn't have the footage for Leia to project herself. J.J. Abrams then comes out and he kind of throws a monkey wrench in this whole thing, saying that Leia used the last bit of her life force to connect to Ben Solo. basically in a way to try to awaken Ben Solo, as if Ben Solo and Kylo Ren are two different people basically contained in the same body. So she's bringing Ben back to the surface. So Leia used the last bit of her life force to connect to Ben Solo on a soulful level. So basically she is in his head, she's in his heart, she's in his soul at this moment. That's the important thing. You hear Leia's voice say, Ben. Ben looks away, and then this happens. Rey just killed Leia. A good majority of a movie is told through the way that it's edited. And in this particular sequence, the maker of the movie confirms that Leia had connected to Ben through his soul. We hear her voice, Ben looks away, Rey stabs him, Leia's hand falls. Rey realizes what she's done and freaks out. Also, Leia's body, much like many Jedi before, disappears. But when does it disappear? Does it disappear right after her hand falls and she's dead? Nope. Her body disappears after Ben dies. So while the movie definitely doesn't say it, J.J. Abrams definitely hasn't come out and said it, and I'm probably wrong, I like to wholeheartedly believe that Leia entered Ben to connect to him, Rey stabbed him at that moment, and in doing so, accidentally killed Leia. Because, oh my God, does that pack a punch. And everything that happens before and after that means so much more if you take that into account. Especially, probably my favorite part of this entire movie, which is Chewbacca's reaction to finding out that Leia is dead. It is the first time in all of Star Wars history that we have truly seen someone genuinely react with just anguish upon finding out that someone has died. Especially with Chewie, because this is the last of his oldest friends in existence. They're all gone now. With the exception of like Lando and a couple of droids, everyone he's known for all of, the last 50, 60 years is dead. And if you think about that death as an accidental murder by her own Padawan, then wow. Anyway, even if all of that is wrong, at the very least, Rey murders Kylo Ren while he's distracted, blatantly stabbing him through the stomach with his own lightsaber. And your journey to the dark side will be complete. But then she feels guilty or whatever, and so she immediately heals him using her little force healing ability that we established earlier in the movie. Because God forbid any action have a consequence in this movie. I mean, Leia is literally the only one that dies in this movie without some kind of a fake out. Then Rey tells him that she always wanted to take his hand, because of course she did. But she wanted to take Ben's hand, not Kylo Ren's hand. And if anything, that pretty well proves that she's got a penchant for the dark side. Gotta love those bad boys. I mean, here's a guy, killed his dad right in front of Rey, killed a whole bunch of people at a Jedi school, enslaved a galaxy, destroyed whole planets, and actually tried to kill Rey herself and everyone she cares about. But yeah, I could see why you would, want to take his hand and have the Reylo thing happen. Sure, why not? Then, just to add insult to injury, she steals his ship, which leads me to wonder, how does he get off of Endor exactly? And as if that's not enough, why throw the lightsaber into the ocean? Seems like that might come in handy at some point in the next few hours. So then, as if my migraine wasn't quite bad enough, instead of going to seek out her revenge and kill Palpatine like she's been planning this whole movie, she decides, you know what, screw it all, I'm just gonna go into seclusion like Luke Skywalker did on Ahch-To, burns the ship with the Wayfinder still inside, takes the lightsaber and throws it into the fire. Luckily, Luke Skywalker shows up in the nick of time to catch the lightsaber and take it up there and be like, what are you doing? Throwing your Jedi weapon away is just disrespectful. And then something really weird happens where Luke looked right into the camera, stuck up his middle finger and said, "This is for you, Rian Johnson," and then went, So what? Just because she possibly accidentally just killed Leia, she decides to say, screw the entire galaxy, I'm just gonna go into hiding now and give up my entire purpose and let all my friends die? And then Luke says that he realizes that he was wrong because he's dead now, and that's enough to talk her out of exile and screwing over the galaxy. So Luke gives her the lightsaber back, and as a bonus, gives her Leia's lightsaber. Says that he was training Leia, and on the last night of her training, she had a vision where her son was gonna die and all this stuff, and so she quit being a Jedi and went to be the, General Leia with the Resistance and stuff. Thanks for spoiling the movie, Prophecy. So then Palpatine contacts General Pryde, because since Hux is the spy, of course, we have to have a new bad guy character who's not such a whiny little wimp guy, so we have General Pryde now. And Palpatine acknowledges that Leia's actions interrupted his plan. So that means that Palpatine is aware of what Leia did. He knows what happened with Kylo Ren, that Kylo Ren has now been Solo again. He knows that Kylo Ren failed to get Rey and kill her or bring her to him. He's aware of everyone's location and what they are doing. So he's able to sense all of that. So again, I ask, why could he not sense the location of a young girl who didn't even know she was a Jedi for 14 years when she was on Jakku? Palpatine tells General Pryde that he needs to get a Star Destroyer and bring it to Exegol. He doesn't need a Wayfinder. I guess Palpatine's just going to instruct him how to get there or something, but he doesn't need one. And so he goes there. Speaking of Wayfinders, as luck would have it, the Wayfinder on Kylo Ren's ship survived the fire. Somehow. But Rey is like, I don't have a ship now, so I can't go to Exegol. And Luke's like, you sure do, and raises his X-Wing up out of the ocean. Now, first of all, that X-Wing has been underwater for presumably several years. Is there no water? I mean, is everything just waterproof in Star Wars, or how is the ship still functional? Not only functional, but it's in great working condition. Secondly, and more importantly, if you paid attention in The Last Jedi, Luke used one of the wings from his X-Wing as a door to his little hut thing, so your X-Wing is missing a wing. Or did he just fix that real quick before she took off? I mean, we've got the endless 16-hour time period here, so they had time to fix the Falcon. Surely he's got time to fix an X-Wing. This movie marks the second occasion, so twice now we have actually seen a Force ghost interact with something tangible. Luke caught the lightsaber, so obviously they can, hold actual objects and interact with real life things. Even back during the original trilogy, George Lucas had actually originally planned to have Obi-Wan and Yoda show up for the fight against Palpatine at the end of Return of the Jedi. So why not just have Luke come along with you and, help out in the big fight against Palpatine? Finish the fight that you and or your father never finished before. Instead, we just get to hear her, hear some voices and stuff, because, that's exciting. But we'll come back to that. Going back to something mentioned earlier about Luke and Lando not checking D.O. to see if he had any kind of intel or anything in there. Well, turns out he does! Of course he does! In fact, he had all the information needed for an entire full airstrike on Exegol. Seems like that might have been worth checking out a few years ago, but hey, better late than never. Right, Luke? Now, if only the Resistance had a way to get to Exegol. Luckily, Rey just sends a transmission that just gives them the map. So now there's maps all over the place. Everyone can go to Exegol. And now begins another stupid series of events. Poe explains that the Star Destroyers, the Final Order Star Destroyers, cannot activate their shields until they exit the atmosphere of Exegol. Okay, I can live with that. But also, they need a navigations tower to direct them which way to go. And without this navigation tower, until they are out of the atmosphere, they're just completely useless. Allow me to reiterate, without the navigations tower, the Star Destroyers don't know which way to go. Up! They can't go up without a tower telling them how. Sheev Palpatine once manipulated an entire Senate, an entire galaxy, to boost him to become an emperor, to turn on the Jedi, the people who had been protectors of the peace for generations, who then acted as emperor for 20 some odd years, who figured out how to return from the dead, and yet he cannot seem to build a machine that is smart, for lack of better words. First Death Star, you got an exhaust port that will just blow the whole thing up. Second Death Star, you got, a reactor that will blow the whole thing up. And now you've built an entire fleet of starships that can point in any direction and fly clear across an entire galaxy at faster than light speed, but they can't go up without a tower telling them how. I mean, just look, there's a sky. That's up. I mean, look, there's the sky. You could see it from the ship. Go that way. That's really all you gotta do. You need a tower to tell you to do this? Why could they not just say that they need the same kind of navigation that you get from the Wayfinder to get out of Exegol that you need to get into Exegol? That would at least make some kind of sense. The tower gives them the directions on how to navigate the big cloud thing that's outside of Exegol that makes it impossible to get to. They need the tower to tell them how to do that. That would have made sense instead of they need it to go that way. Anyway, so the Resistance, they form their little plan. It involves both an airstrike and a ground strike, but also completely depends on Lando and Chewie flying off to the core worlds to look for help. Poe says it's gonna work. It's definitely gonna work. Trust me, it's gonna work. They will come if we lead them. But do we not remember, like a couple months ago, it was like, right there on Crate, the First Order showing up and they're kicking our butts and most of the Resistance is dead. If we can get to this base on Crate, we can call for help. And they do. And nobody answered. Like, actually, nobody answered. But you're right, they'll come this time. Sure, why not? So we finally enter the final act of this headache of a movie. So Rey shows up to confront Grandpa Palpatine, and suddenly they are joined by like thousands and thousands of these black-robed guys. We're never told, so who are they? Well, it turns out that they are another cult, this time called the Sith Eternal. Followers of Palpatine, and many of them were actually like leftover people from the Empire. Basically, Palpatine had like a whole bunch of contingency plans should he ever be struck down. That loyalist members of the Empire were to rendezvous out in the unknown regions, and there they would build a new empire. And that's not only where the First Order came from, but that's where these guys came from. So the Sith Eternal are like leftover guys from the Empire and just Palpatine loyalists in general. They are the ones that built the fleet, so he didn't just conjure it up with the Force. The Sith Eternal built this new Star Destroyer fleet, and they're also the ones that are like manning the ships and stuff like that. So basically, when you're not in uniform, you put on your robe and you stand in the stadium to watch the Palpatine show, I guess, down in the amphitheater. Palpatine explains to Rey that he didn't want her dead after all. Make up your mind, movie. Instead, he actually wants her to become the Empress of the new Empire. But really, I have no idea which version of his story to believe, because, like, immediately afterwards, he tells her that if she kills him, then he will just possess her. And if that's true, why would you tell her? You are fully well aware that she came there to kill you for revenge for the death of her parents. So why not just keep your mouth shut and you'll get what you want? Meanwhile, the Resistance shows up outside. They start fighting. TIE fighters start flying out. Big space battle, blah, 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 blah. You know, typical Star Wars ending. Ground craft lands. You get Finn and Rose and Mary Brandybuck and Jonna, and they all ride out on horses and whatever and start shooting. And the guy on the ship is like, start disrupting their speeders. And he's like, I can't. They're not on speeders because they're on horseback in Star Wars. So they take off on their little space horses to go blow up the navigation tower so that the ships don't go up. They manage to accomplish this fairly easily, but of course General Pride, he sees what's happening outside and he's like, oh, of course, they're gonna blow up the navigation tower so we can't fly up. So just transfer the power up to the tower that's here on my ship, because they're down there, they're not up here, so they can't get this one. I mean, why would you not just like show up in your ships, immediately target the 2 towers and shoot them from space, blow them up, and be like, okay, cool, we're good now, so everybody fly in, let's start attacking. Oh, right, because that would have been the smart thing to do. And then Kylo Ren shows up somehow, which again leads me to ask, how did he get off of Endor? And I would say, well, I mean, he is Kylo Ren, so he could have just, you know, called for a battalion or whatever and just taken one of their TIE fighters and flown off or whatever. But like immediately following Palpatine saying, I know what happened on Endor, Kylo Ren was marked as a deserter. He betrayed the First Order. So something tells me they're not going to just loan him a ship. So how did he get there? Not important. And he's immediately surrounded by the Knights of Ren. If only he had a lightsaber. So they start kicking the crap out of him. And meanwhile, Rey has actually agreed to let him possess her and become Empress of the new Empire. But of course, she also senses that Ben's getting the crap kicked out of him, so time for another Force Skype call. So she hands him Leia's lightsaber through the Force and betrays Palpatine. Ben immediately wipes out the Knights of Ren, thus making me wonder why they were ever there to begin with. The answer to that being, well, they were mentioned in episode 7, and then Rian Johnson chose not to do anything with them, so we had to have them in this movie, even if they had nothing to do. And after like 14 seconds, they're all dead. Meanwhile, after her little betrayal, Palpatine sicks some of his guards on Rey. So Rey kills the same 6 guys twice, which is actually absolutely hilarious. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. PSA Sitch actually has a really funny breakdown of this video. If I can find it again, I'll put the link in the description below. I mean, maybe she like killed everybody and then, you know, like healed them, thinking that healing them would make them turn to the good side, and then they would like help her fight Palpatine. But then when they didn't turn good, she just had to kill them again. I want to think that's what happened. So then Ben suddenly shows up to like help her face down against Palpatine, and for some reason, I mean, why is she surprised to see him? She just handed him a lightsaber through the Force, knowing that he was nearby getting the crap kicked out of him, but now she's surprised that he's here. Maybe she suddenly had a moment of clarity where she's like, wait a minute, how did he get off Endor? So they both put their lightsabers up and they move in to strike down Palpatine, even though he literally just told her that that's what he wants her to do so that he can possess her. But hey, you know, whatever you gotta do. But instead of just letting it happen, you know, the thing that he wants to happen, no, instead of letting it happen, he decides he's going to attack them back. So he like puts his hands up, you know, getting ready to do some lightning or something, but then like life force flies from Rey and Ben into him, and like it heals his hands and all this stuff, and suddenly he's like, ooh, a dyad. Everybody's excited about the dyad, except for the audience who has no idea what that's supposed to be. So, change of plans. You know what? Instead of me possessing you, how about I just kill you both by sucking all the life out of you, heal myself, and become super uber bad guy, powerful, old self me again. Yeah, let's do that. Meanwhile, the fleet, they're getting their butts kicked. That one pilot guy whose name escapes me right now, but he's like Poe's best friend or something, and he's the guy that we like see in all the movies, but really has nothing to do with the movies, you know, this guy. Well, he dies, and Poe gets all upset and starts apologizing to everyone, saying, I really thought we had a chance. When suddenly Lando shows up with like every ship that's ever existed in sci-fi history. Like, seriously, I'm not 100% on this, but I am almost positive when I was in the theater that I actually saw the Starship Enterprise in there. Which, fun fact, the Millennium Falcon has appeared in Star Trek First Contact, so it's a possibility. But otherwise, yes, there's like 80 trillion ships here. You got the Mandalorian's ship is back there, Han's freighter from The Force Awakens is in there, the Ghost from Rebels is in there, Wedge from the original trilogy is flying around in there, and it literally just dawned dawned on me that I left out a part earlier where the First Order blew up Kijimi, and we're left thinking that Zori Bliss and Babu Frick were dead. But much like Chewbacca and 3PO and somebody else here in a little while, no, they're not dead, because people don't actually die in this movie, except for Leia. Apparently, Leia's dead. And Zori Bliss and Babu Frick show back up. Personally, I like to think that it's just a testament to how suave Lando truly is. That he can just go out there and be like, well, you know, the Resistance called out there and nobody answered. But Lando calls with a smooth Colt 45 and the entire galaxy comes running. Meanwhile, Papa Palpy, he gets all full on his Raylo juice, comes down off his little claw machine and decides he's going to go change clothes real quick. Which, to be fair, he probably needed. It looked like he'd been hanging up there for a while, so I'm sure he smelled pretty ripe. And he comes back to do a little bit of monologuing, as he does. He's just so good at it. Ben tries to get up, and Palpatine's like, much like your grandfather threw me off a thing a bunch of years ago, I'm gonna do the same to you now. So he pushes him, and he falls off a cliff, and now Ben's dead. Except that he's not, because the movie's not over yet. If only Jedi knew how to fly. And then, of course, you can't have the end of a Star Wars movie without the main villain showing you your friends dying. So Palpatine opens up this giant skylight. So you took the time to install a skylight, but you couldn't install a door for the Star Destroyers? And actually starts shooting lightning up into the sky, frying every one of the Resistance ships. Of course, this shorts out all their systems, and they all start falling out of the sky. Luckily, things fall very, very slowly in Star Wars, so no one actually, hits the ground or anything. Meanwhile, Rey is just kind of, laying on the ground, watching the light show, and starts whispering, "Be with me. Be with me," trying to get a hold of, all the Jedis that have been ghosting her this whole movie. No pun intended there with the ghosting thing, by the way. And at long last, as we reach the climax of the movie, she hears the Jedi. She hears them. Yeah, that's about it. She hears Anakin and Obi-Wan and Yoda and Mace Windu and Ahsoka Tano and Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger and Luminara and Dooley and I forget who else, but a whole bunch of different Jedi. And they actually got all the actors that played these people in the movies or the cartoons, whichever one they're from, to come in and record the lines for the movie. You had them there to work. So why not slap a costume on them and have them actually show up on screen? How freaking amazing would it have been to see Rey standing next to Yoda and Qui-Gon Jinn and Mace Windu and Anakin and Obi-Wan and Luke and just everybody. Not to mention having the first time movie live screen appearance of Ahsoka and Ezra and Kanan. It would have been the most jaw-dropping, oh my god moment in movie history. But no, we get to hear them though, I guess. That's better than nothing. I mean, not really, but I guess. I mean, the rest of this movie could have been worse than 1,000 Phantom Menaces, and that one scene would have made up for the whole thing, but okay. I mean, it would have been more awesome than the Avengers Assemble moment from Endgame, but whatever. And they wouldn't have even had to fight. I mean, having them fight beside her, even 1,000 times more awesome, but I'm not even asking for that. Just think of it like this. I rewrote this scene on how I would have liked to have seen it. Now, this isn't script accurate or anything like that. You have Palpatine, giddy, laughing insanely as he shoots his Force lightning into the sky, drastically affecting the battle above. Meanwhile, he is completely oblivious to what is happening behind him with Rey. She lies drained on the floor, looking beyond the lightning, beyond the battle, beyond space. She whispers into the ears of the Force itself, "Be with me, be with me, be with me." She hopes desperately, begging that the Jedi of old will hear her plea, "Be with me." Suddenly, she sees a familiar shape begin to take form beside her. Luke Skywalker fades into view. He smiles warmly at Rey, a comforting smile. Suddenly, beside Luke, a new form, one of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Then another of Obi-Wan's master Qui-Gon Jinn. Another, this time it's Yoda. Another, and another, and another. One by one, just as we had heard their voices before, now we actually see them delivering the same lines to Rey as they look her in the eye, smiling warmly. They continue speaking their words of encouragement to Rey as they collectively reach out their hands, lifting her to her feet. Catching movement out of the corner of his eye, Palpatine spins around wildly, a look of absolute shock taking place from the joy that had just dawned his face. There, he sees Rey standing defiant with so many Jedi. Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn, even his old apprentice, Anakin Skywalker himself. Rey ignites her lightsaber. As the blade extends, the room flashes with a brilliant blue light that engulfs the entire room. And with this flash, the Jedi disappear, almost as if they have all absorbed into Rey. She's now unified with all of the Jedi who came before. As we hear the last words echoing out into the distance, the words of Luke Skywalker.
1,000 generations live in you now.
Rey smiles. Palpatine's face again changes, this time from shock to unbridled rage. He thrusts his hands forward, ready for the battle to come. In response, and just as quickly, Rey springs forward. I mean, wouldn't that have been so much better? Apparently there were early versions of the script, or maybe it was one of the 4 or 5 whatever endings that they came up with, that did have at least some of the Jedi appearing in spirit form. So why would you even consider even thinking about changing that? That would have been the most amazing thing to happen on a screen in the history of things happening on a screen. Anyway, Palpatine turns the lightning on her and she just blocks it with the lightsaber. That being the same lightning that was able to strike the entire Resistance fleet a moment ago, and now we're blocking it with a lightsaber. But then he says, a scavenger girl is no match for the power in me. Isn't that the reason he wanted her? Because of the power that she has? Or at the very least, the power that she will eventually have. I mean, just like 5 minutes ago, he wanted to actually possess her because of the power that she has. So what happened between then and now? And like I said before, all he has to do is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then she would just kill him and he would have exactly what he wanted to begin with. This is all so wrong. Then Palpatine is like,
I am all the Sith.
I don't know what he means by that. You're not all the Sith. You're Palpatine. There were quite a few Sith that came before you. There's been a couple that have come along after you. So you're not all of them. And then Rey is like, oh yeah, well I'm all the Jedi. I mean, if they had taken my advice, she would have literally have been all the Jedi, and it would have made sense. But I mean, your way works too, I guess. And then, she, get this, pulls out a second lightsaber, and somehow that causes the lightning to go back against Palpatine for some reason, but it didn't melt his face this time like it did in Revenge of the Sith. This time it made him and the whole place explode. Wait, what? First of all, why does one lightsaber absorb the lightning, but 2 will deflect it? 2, why did it not melt his face like it did the first time? Why did it make him explode? 3, why didn't he just stop doing the lightning the second it started coming back at him? 4, why is his exploding supposed to mean that he's dead for good this time? He says that he's been dead before many times, so why would this be any different than any of those other times? And 5, why doesn't he just possess her like he said he would do if she killed him? The movie's not even listening to itself anymore. Anyway, outside, the Resistance finally manages to shoot down General Pryde's ship, and that causes all the other ships to come crashing down because we've never seen that happen before in Star Wars. Pretty much just proving that the Sith fleet didn't just need the tower to go up, but they needed it to, like, I guess, stay in the air at all for some reason. My hope for the future of this video is that somebody somewhere will begin a drinking game. Go back to the beginning and watch all the way through, taking a shot every time I say, for some reason, for reasons, or somehow. And please don't die doing that, because that's entirely possible. Here's a freebie for some reason. So Palpatine is dead. The whole place like explodes, which kills all the Sith Eternal guys, I guess. And all of the Star Destroyers come crashing down, which kills all those guys, I guess. Everybody else is dying. So Rey decides to die too, for reasons. But oh wait, Ben is still alive somehow. Yet another of like 30 fake outs in this movie. And now, even though no one's ever been able to do it since the day before this movie came out with Baby Yoda, then Rey, now Ben can also do Force healing. So he brings Rey back to life and then dies. Why does Ben die? Now, this has not actually been like answered by JJ or anybody, but this is what I think. When Rey explains why she's able to heal using the Fourth, she says that I said fourth. She says that she gives a little bit of herself over, and that is what does the healing. Well, since Ben is literally bringing her back from the dead, he's trading his life for hers, and that's why it kills him. Don't know, just a theory, but it makes sense, I guess, sort of. Yeah, maybe. So Ben dies, but not before they toss the Reylo fans a bone and they have a little kiss, which I still don't understand, but okay, I can live with it. But do you realize that the entire third act of this film served absolutely no purpose whatsoever? Think about this for a second. Things would have actually worked out better for everyone if Rey had just stayed far away and Kylo Ren had just stayed far away. Like if he had turned good and she had been like, okay, let's run off to, to Octu together or something and just have lots of sex and babies and stuff. And they could have just done that and the galaxy would have been just fine. Palpatine would not have been able to drain from the whole dyad thing, so he wouldn't have been able to heal himself. Without healing himself, he would have been too weak to do the whole lightning storm on the Resistance fleet. Without the lightning storm, the fleet would have just showed up, attacked the towers, blown those up, and the ships would have all come crashing down. And since there wasn't a door, there was just a big giant hole in the ground, they probably would have crushed Palpatine in the process. And then Reylo could have went off in to Canto Bight and hit the slots or something. Just think of how much money you'd win with the Force on your side. But no, you had to ruin all of that by changing Rey's name at the last minute to Mary Sue Palpatine, a Jedi who wants revenge for selfish reasons, but isn't a bad guy and isn't even worried about slipping to the dark side by anyone. For some reason. I mean, you remember back in 1983 when George Lucas changed the title from Revenge of the Jedi to Return of the Jedi? Actually, originally it was Return, then it went to Revenge, and then it went back to Return because revenge isn't the way of the Jedi. Yeah, those were good times. So if we had already established the fact that this took place over a course of 16 hours, then the last time we were given an hour update was right after they had left Pisana. So way earlier in the movie, it was already at 8 hours. So you gotta figure, this is all happening at the last few seconds. How was Lando able to go all the way to the core systems, raise thousands and thousands and thousands of ships, and get to Exegol in time? And then afterwards, Finn's all people are rising up all over the galaxy. How does he know that? You're on Exegol. You're not all over. How do you know this? Why don't we get to see people rising up all over the galaxy? We see Star Destroyers crashing over Bespin and Endor and Jakku. And are those supposed to be First Order ships? Or are those from the Sith fleet? And if they're from the Sith fleet, how did they get there? Because they didn't have a tower to tell them to go up. I honestly don't know if they're First Order or Sith fleet because the movie doesn't tell us. But I do know that the one that's over Endor, the one that Wicket and what is supposed to actually be his son, by the way, the one that they get to see, that one was brought down using a Holdo maneuver. Even though, according to Poe, that move is 1 in a million. That means that somebody, somewhere, sacrificed their life to take that ship down. Who? Who Whose heroic act just saved a whole planet, presumably? Apparently, they're not important enough for us to know. Then we get an after-the-fact, extremely uncomfortable scene. And no, I'm not talking about the lesbian kiss that was completely out of place and completely forced in there. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing wrong with a lesbian kiss, but that was so awkwardly placed, and they made such a big deal out of it, that it just felt weird. I'm talking about the Lando and Jannah scene back on the Rebel base. Lando's sitting there looking all kind of bummed out for whatever reason. I mean, you just saved the galaxy, dude. I don't know why you're bummed out. And Jannah asks him, you know, where are you from? And he says, and then he asks her where she's from, and she says she doesn't know. Then he looks at her in this completely Billy D. Williams type of way and says,
Well, let's find out.
which completely comes off as like he wants to show her his starship. She wants to show him her and they want to take that ship to hyperspace. But then we find out off screen that she might be his daughter? Apparently, yeah. That's according to JJ. But it's never mentioned that Lando had a kid. It's never mentioned that that kid then went missing. So where did this whole thing come from? I mean, it looks like Lando's about to take Jannah to Force Town, but no, apparently that's her dad. Whoops. At the beginning of this scene, we see like all the ships coming back and everybody's running around, everybody's cheering. This whole time their ship's landing, but then all of a sudden, right before Rey's ship lands, C-3PO is like,
Did you hear that?
and then they look up and see Rey's ship come down. Why would you acknowledge the sound of that ship landing when there's been like dozens of other ships landing all around you? Actually, I just realized I may have an answer for this one. I don't know if it's right or not because it doesn't quite match up. But if nobody else in the rest of the movie said a word, it would have been perfect. Because believe it or not, the very first words spoken in any Star Wars film were C-3PO saying,
Did you hear that?
so if that had been the last line spoken, it would have been a beautiful little bookend. I guess it is the last line spoken by C-3PO. So, okay, the one actor who's been in like every Star Wars movie with the exception of Solo. Anthony Daniels, I guess, maybe that's why, perhaps, I don't know. That's all I got, though. Unfortunately, however, there is more dialogue in the movie because Rey then goes off to Tatooine. For some reason. Never been to Tatooine. Never talked about Tatooine. But I guess it's a desert planet, and she did grow up on a desert planet, so why is she going back into exile? Why is she abandoning all of her friends that she just saved the galaxy with? Are they not just going to keep in touch? She's just going to go live on a farm from a guy she knew for like a few weeks, who occasionally comes and hangs out with her as a ghost now? That's not weird at all. So in a scene that is probably the worst Star Wars scene since Now This Is Pod Racing.
Now this is pod racing.
She goes to Tatooine to the Lars farm. Not even Skywalker farm, it's Lars farm. I mean, it's where, Anakin went there like one time. And then Luke grew up there till he was like 17 and then left. So I still don't understand. Anyway, she buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers for some reason. And then it's revealed that she made her own lightsaber out of her staff. And it's a yellow bladed lightsaber. But did you notice that if you watch there's like little dots that go around, like towards where the blade comes out, there's dots that go around. And if you watch those, they blink blue, then green, then yellow. So did she like combine some other crystals or something in there? I would suggest that maybe she used like Luke and Leia's lightsabers, but they were both blue. Now that I think about it, I originally was going to say, yeah, she used them both. Maybe Luke gave her his old lightsaber too, the green one, and she used that one and the original Skywalker one to make this one. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws at this point. Why even make your own? Why not just keep using the two you have? I mean, they work just fine, but no, you bury them. Okay. And then this lady like comes stalking up out of absolutely nowhere like a ninja in the middle of the Tunisian desert. And she's like, well, nobody's been here for years. Who are you? And Rey introduces herself. She's like, oh, I'm Rey. Let me put away this lightsaber real quick, even though you obviously were standing there while the blade was still out, so you already saw it, but I'm going to try and hide it now for whatever reason. And then, God forbid, this lady act like, any normal human being ever and just say, oh, well, nice to meet you, Rey. Yeah, this place has been abandoned for a long time. I'm Margaret. I live, next hut over. But no. Instead, she takes on like the most rude Karen sounding voice I've ever heard in my life, and she's all like,
Ray who?
what is the big deal with last names all of a sudden? I genuinely thought that this trilogy was like going in a direction of like anyone can be the hero regardless of who you are. Your name isn't who you are. You aren't defined by your name. All these great themes that were in there that are just tossed out the window all of a sudden because this calloused old woman wants to know her last name too, because Rey isn't good enough. So then Rey like looks off into the distance for a really long time. And I love to think about this lady like, Rey who? Why? What are you looking at over there? What, can you not just answer me? What's going on? Are you having a stroke? But off in the distance, she sees two ghosts beginning to appear and walking out of the sand, and it's Luke Skywalker and Leia. So, no Ben then, huh? That's what we're going with? No Ben, just Luke and Leia. And finally, she decides Reys Skywalker. All because of a guy that she knew for a few weeks. I mean, look at the alternatives here. You've got Leia, who was her actual trainer. I mean, Luke literally taught her 3 lessons and she left. She knew Leia for presumably longer. Leia actually trained her, so that's a Solo or an Organa. Then you've got Han and or Ben, the guy that she, for whatever reason, was in love with. That's also Solo. Then you got the dude that I met for like 3 weeks that was like a total jerk to me. Then he taught me a couple of lessons, and up to the point that I then have to leave against his wishes, and then he died, and I see his ghost every once in a while. You know what? I'm gonna take his name. And by the way, can anybody see Force ghosts, or is it just the Jedi that see the Force ghosts? That's something that none of the movies have ever answered, and I've always wanted to know. I mean, like, they kind of look off in the distance at the end of Jedi, like maybe they're seeing them too, but we don't really know. And if they can, then that woman, Rey who? And then she stares off in the distance, and then the old lady is like, oh my god, there's ghosts, I'm out of here. So maybe they can't. I'm guessing that they can't. So I just love to think that she just stares off into the distance for like, I wrote it down, 26 seconds. From the time she says Rey who to the time that she says Rey Solo, she stares off into the distance for 26 seconds. So just stop and think about that for a minute. You ask somebody, hey, what's your name? And then they look away for 26 seconds. How long are you gonna stand there until you're like, are you okay? Regardless, she definitely saw the lightsaber. I mean, it was on and she snuck up like a ninja, like I said, and then Rey's like, oh crap, and puts it away like she's gotta hide it or something. But yeah, she definitely saw the lightsaber. And this is a lady that's like old enough to have been around for both the Republic and the Empire and the First Order. I mean, she's easily 50, 60 something years old. So that's about how long this saga has taken place over. So surely she knows what a lightsaber is. She remembers the Jedi. She might have been a little girl when the Jedi were around, but she at least remembers the Jedi. So as far as she knows, here we are out in the middle of nowhere, the middle of a desert planet at an abandoned farm, and this random girl shows up out of nowhere, like she's moving into the place, and she's got a lightsaber like 30 some odd years after all the Jedi are long gone. This isn't weird at all. I mean, maybe as far as she knows, she's like, I remember when the Jedi, like, you know, they turned on the Republic. They started the Clone Wars and they tried to kill the Chancellor. They scarred him for life. Maybe she wanted her last name so she could, like, then go and report her to some authorities or something somewhere. But I digress. Perhaps the 2 biggest questions of all come right here at the end. Why would Luke and Leia appear but not Ben? It doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, Luke taught Ben and Luke taught Leia. Leia knows how to do it, so Luke obviously taught her how to do it. Presumably, he would have taught Ben how to do it as well. I mean, maybe Ben wasn't all the way through his training yet, but that's his nephew, so you would think he would teach him things like this. And 2, even if you're not going to have Ben show up, why not at least, like, explain where he is? You know, he never learned how to do it, or whatever the case may be, but at least be like, he's always with you, or something. Say something, some profound something. something so that Reys Skywalker isn't the last 2 words of the Skywalker Saga. Overall, I'm really angry with that ending simply because that this whole thing, the whole trilogy really has been building up about you are not your name. You know, here we have a stormtrooper that joins the rebellion. He doesn't have a name, he has a number, but he makes a name out of it. He becomes his own person, identifies himself by his own person and his actions. Then you've got Rey, who doesn't even know who she is through, 90% of the movies. And then when she finds out who she actually is, she goes against all that. You have everything from a stormtrooper that goes good and defines his own name to I might be related to Palpatine, but I don't have to be Palpatine, to, you could even argue that Kylo Ren was Ben Solo, but turned on the Skywalker and the Solo name. You've got people like Broom Boy. Here's this little slave kid that's, the next Anakin or whatever. And so this whole time, it was your name does not define who you are. And that's a great message, a fantastic message. So in all honesty, she probably should have just said, I'm just Rey, and just left it at that. Or at the very least, take the name Solo because that was the name of the guy you loved. Had he stayed alive, you probably would have ended up together. Or at the very least, they would have been together until he went to trial for killing thousands across the galaxy over the last few years as a warlord. But still, and in just the last few seconds of the movie, you had to ruin it by having her just take on the name of a random person that she knew. Because honestly, her relationship with Luke Skywalker was nothing more than just a couple of weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks at best. And that's being extremely generous. Even better, if your name doesn't define you, then just accept that you're a Palpatine. What better way? Do people even know that his name was Palpatine, or did they just know him as the Emperor? Because that's all they ever referred to him as. But even if they did, now you've got this opportunity to be like, yeah, my grandfather was the Emperor, and well, I'm not him. Let me show you how good of a person I am. Let me redefine the name Palpatine. That's empowering. But no, we're going to call it the Skywalker Saga, so we got to end it with the Skywalker name. Hence the name, The Rise of Skywalker. I wish they would have gone with my idea for that. I really do. I posed the theory before everything came out that this would end with no more Jedi, no more Sith, and that she would kind of go in sort of the gray area, and that the new Force users would be called Skywalkers. Like, that would have been a very poetic and beautiful ending, as she does it as a tribute to him or whatever. But no, we got what we got, and it is what it is. And again, just like Avengers Endgame, let me say that I did not hate this movie. I didn't. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought, as far as like the banter and stuff goes, like the way that the characters interacted with one another, it felt more like Star Wars than the other 2 movies did from the trilogy. Like, it was just fun. It was a fun watch. Yes, there's a lot of it that you just have to shut your brain off and not think about anything, or this happens. But other than that, yeah, I really did actually enjoy it, believe it or not. What did you think? Any questions that I might have missed, drop them in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching this ridiculously long video. My throat hurts from talking for so long because I've been filming for like 3 hours, so I don't even want to know what this ends up being after being edited. But yeah, I've got a little over a week to edit it, so that's gonna be fun. But make sure you guys subscribe because we are getting back into the swing of things. That's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Got an idea for a video for me? Let me know below. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll put the links up at the end of the video and down in the description. While you're out here on the internet, please pop over to www.geekycool.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things nerd. You got reviews, you got top 10 lists, you got just articles in general, you got my videos. My videos are on there. I know you're watching it right now. Maybe you're watching it on there. I don't know. But if you're not, you can. You even have a weekly live vlog that you yourself can actually interact with. That's awesome. It's like every Tuesday night. Again, that's www.geekycool.com. Go over, check it out. Tell them I said hey, and bring a snack, because everybody likes a snack every now and then. I am going to go grab something to drink and rest my voice for the rest of the night. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this was an enormous endeavor, and thank you for sticking through it. and all that. I thank you so much. We'll see you next time.